So welcome to this video, which is all about developing the analytical talent in your data team. And fundamentally, these are teams who use data to drive action. Now, this video is aimed at managers or leaders of those data teams who really want to see their data strategy making an impact on the business or organisational outcomes. There are clearly many different elements to that, like the tech stack you choose, the data management frameworks you put in place, and how you align what you're doing to the business strategy. And your data team is a huge part of it all, ultimately ensuring that your data strategy is successful. Developing your data team makes so much sense on very many levels. It can boost employee engagement and retention. It can improve the performance of the employee as they become better skilled to do their role and better support business outcomes. And by giving them opportunities to grow and think differently, you're really empowering your analytical team to find ways through the challenges and blockers they experience day to day. And yet the challenge is often how. How do we develop our data teams in a way that isn't a tick box exercise? How do we offer development opportunities that they actually want? Because we all know you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. How do we create a development plan that truly supports the business? Because we're investing in the skill set that the team need to do their job more effectively. And how on earth am I supposed to have time to think about all of this on top of my current role? So take a breath, because we're going to start exploring these issues in this video, and then you can decide what action you want to take going forward. In this video, we're going to be covering three different areas. We're going to be looking at common approaches to training and development and how they might be limiting the effect your team can make in the organisation. The three pillars of training and development for your data teams and the foundation that needs to be in place before you offer anything to your team. And then finally, how to move forward in the most effective way. So a bit of background about me. My name's Nikki and I've been working in data roles for the last 16 years or so, in various analyst roles and now working in management. So I've really lived and breathed the life of an analyst and all that entails. From a technical perspective, I've been working predominantly with SQL Server over the last 10 years to extract data from an ERP system. And in 2017, I passed my Querying SQL Server exam with Microsoft. I've also been using Power BI since its early days on SharePoint all the way through to its current format on the Power BI service, and in recent years using Power BI Embedded. As you can imagine, there are also many other tools that I picked up along the way: Excel, SAS, sys packages, SQL Server analysis services, Crystal reports, Access. But ultimately with the same intention: to take data in its raw form and transform it into something meaningful that can affect change. And whilst I have absolutely loved that technical journey, I also recognise that there have been some really huge frustrations at times. As I've progressed, I've been able to look back on my journey and see that some of those frustrations have been the way I've approached things, or not perhaps understanding the best way to approach certain things. And so I started Empowered Analysts, which is my training and development business, to support data professionals in a deeper way, because I really understand the support that we need to be truly effective in our data roles. And ultimately, that's what we all want. We all want to see our data teams to be effective and see our businesses benefiting. So let's move on to the first part of this session, which is going to cover some common approaches that I've seen over the years and which may sound familiar to you. These are some common approaches I've seen that can be causing some problems or limitations as you look to develop your analytical talent. So the first approach is the let us know what you want to do and we'll pay for it. This is an interesting strategy and one to really consider carefully. So if your analysts have a very specific idea about what they want to do, you're likely to see a really high uptake. However, there is a risk that it doesn't really add benefit to the business. Now, I believe this approach can be rooted in a bit of fear of losing staff, and understandably, staff retention is an important factor when we consider training and development plans. Development plans can go a really long way towards supporting high staff retention, but they really are no guarantee. And as a result, I'm a really firm believer in creating development and training options that are beneficial for the employee and the business. The other downside to this approach is that some team members won't know what they want to do and will not end up getting any training as a result. And it can make it look like they're not interested, but it's really more of a reflection that they need some support in identifying what would be beneficial for them. Then there's "we'll tell you what you can have without any understanding of why it's being offered" approach. And here, the employee is told what they have to do. If they want any training, then this is it. And if they don't want to do any training, they kind of have to do it anyway. There is very little understanding, really, of the why for them. So, how will it benefit their long term development? How will it benefit their day to day role? And how will it benefit the business? And as a result, the training becomes a bit of a tick box exercise, and everyone is feeling a little bit disappointed with the end result, or they don't really know what the end result really should look like. But no one really talks about it, so it's just swept under the carpet in the hope that it might add some value one day. The next approach I've seen is the "you'll do it in your own time if you're really committed." Now, this tends to suit certain types of individuals who want to spend their free time on developing their technical expertise and domain knowledge. And it's really interesting to note that I don't hear many people choosing to invest much of their time and money on the soft skills. It tends to be really tech skill focused. And perhaps businesses are just as likely to demonstrate that kind of pattern too, but that's one for another subject, another time. The risk with this particular approach is that you really do elevate the risk of losing your staff, because if they're highly motivated to be skilling up outside of work, it's likely they're going to be wanting to be at the cutting edge of technology. They'll be very aware of the latest trends and what they need to know to be really relevant and employable. And these types of individuals tend to worry when their business isn't using the latest tech. And this can be really unhelpful for both sides, because these individuals might try and drive the business in a particular direction they feel will suit their career development, rather than the tools that the business needs to support its overall strategy. And again, this tends to be rooted in a bit of fear about not being employable if they aren't using the latest tech. So those are the common approaches I've seen over the years, and I'd love to hear whether you've seen something else or what your perspective is on the ones that I've mentioned. We're now going to go on to the second part of this video, which is the 3 pillars of development for data teams. These are what I believe you want to be actively working on in order to see an impact from your data function. So first, let's start with the definitive business need, because this is the essence of how to see data being used to positively impact business outcomes. So the first thing in this diagram is what the data professional is good at. The second is what the stakeholder wants. And the third is what the business needs. And the intersection of these 3 areas is where the magic happens. It's the #win that will see results for all 3. To do this, your analytical team need to develop in 3 areas, and these are the technical skills. So this is the normal go-to when it comes to training. It's the really obvious one and very much required to ensure that your team are up to speed with the technical competencies of the role as it stands today and over the coming years. It also includes knowing when to use certain tools over others and adhering to best practice within the team. Next is the stakeholder relationship, and this section is where the soft skills really come into play. It's really, really important. And again, having a safe space to explore the concepts and then refine and practice them will enable your team to operate at the next level. And finally, the business outcomes. So being able to relate their activity to actual business outcomes is fundamental. Yet this is a skill which we rarely expect our data teams to practice outside of their day-to-day roles. Supporting them in refining this skill will pay massive dividends. Underpinning all of these is personal responsibility, and without this foundation, the pillars will fall. Before you invest in any training and development, make sure that you understand the foundations of the individuals in your team. So we said before about the saying of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that really comes into play here. Once you're comfortable and confident that your team are really engaged in those different pillars, then you want to aim for balance across each three. Traditionally, there is a huge focus on the tech skills, and analysts get to practice this each day, so they get very skilled at this. What can be lacking is the deeper skills for stakeholder connection and understanding the business outcomes their data work is contributing to. Focusing on one of these three areas alone is going to cause imbalance and frustration. A bit like an athlete training, you need to strengthen your legs, your arms, and your core. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So when the development plan looks to develop each three of these areas, your team is going to be in a far stronger place to support the business and see their work making a difference. In our final section, we're going to look at what to consider moving forward in the most effective way. If you want to retain your analytical talents, help them to get better at what they do, and support business outcomes, then you need to plan how this is going to take place, because it won't magically happen. Now, you can most likely add value based on the level the team is operating at today. But if you want that to improve further, you need to support the team to level up. And that's where your development plan comes in. First up, you need to plan your development strategy because as Benjamin Franklin put it, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. The plan will typically run through the following steps, where you assess the team needs, create a development plan and define what success could look like, really important, deliver the training, then evaluate and assess it, and iteratively work out what then comes next. It's a combination of having this overarching strategy in place alongside the individual training components that will help you see return on investment in training and development. There's a famous quote from Sun Tzu, the military strategist, who said, "Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat." So committing to a development plan and not just random training activities is your strategy. The individual elements of training are the tactics, and this is a powerful combination. So your strategy builds in the business outcomes and it identifies where your team currently are. Start working on this in light of the three pillars mentioned earlier, and then you can slot in the activities and the training. Once these are aligned, you can consider what the signs of success are and what your team members actually want to do. I firmly believe that you can have a development plan in place for your analytical team that allows them to flourish as individuals and fully supports the business. It requires intentionality and commitment, but it is absolutely possible. So here are some steps that you can put in place as part of that process. So the first is be intentional. When you have crystal clarity on what each individual needs to develop, as well as what the business needs from them, you will be able to plan out over probably 3 to 5 years what development you can offer them. Having this plan, which can be adapted over time, can help you as a data leader steer the ship and ensure that every member of your crew is equipped to do their jobs. The second is give them options and explain the why. A plan which meets the criteria in point 1 will give you and the individual options. And this helps everyone in a few ways. You know that every single option will benefit the business, as you'll have thought about this during the planning process. The individual concerned will have clarity on what is a viable option rather than a very open-ended list. And they're far more likely to select something and be engaged in it because they've had the autonomy of choice. And that's a win for all concerned. Then be clear on the business strategy or the business outcomes you're looking to support. Explain how the options relate to those, because understanding the why is immensely powerful for deeper engagement. The third step is to support them. So you're like their personal trainer, and when we're training, we're going to get discouraged, confused, and a bit unsure. It's really normal, and it's all part of stepping out of our comfort zone. So, from the planning stage to the availability of the training, having regular check ins with them will be utterly invaluable. You'll demonstrate powerful leadership, which helps show that individual that you're actually interested in them. Because let's face it, we all want to be acknowledged and understood. So don't underestimate how much people want to be seen and valued by their line manager or those in leadership roles. Step number 4 is give them permission and keep giving them permission. It may take time for the culture of development to seep through. If the organisation has historically had a hit and miss approach to the consistency of training, people may be hesitant to take it up. It's possible people might feel a bit embarrassed if they're allowed to do training on a regular basis in work time, but other members of staff haven't been given that option. Talking about your training plan with the wider business and constantly normalising it will be an important part of the journey. And the 5th step is be honest about what you can offer. So if you're offering 1 to 2 hours a week of their time in work that's ring fenced, make sure they aren't under huge demand, meaning they'd have to miss deadlines in their workload as a result. Because a really conscientious employee is likely to prioritise meeting their workload, and then it looks like they're not interested in the training. As you reflect on the different types of training that you could offer your team, I want to consider what impact you might see from them. With soft skills, you may have sent your team on a half-day workshop or one that lasts a few days. And that's a great way to introduce concepts, to assess the interest of your team. But the challenge with it is that as humans, we need to go further than understanding the concept of something because we need to be able to practice it. So imagine you want to get really good at tennis. So think Rafa Nadal or Serena Williams. You might read up about it, go on a training course for a few days and get taught the skills you need. But clearly, we all know that to get to a really high level, you need to be practicing consistently for a really long time to play at that standard. And it's the same with the pillars of development. We clearly need the foundation in place, the desire to want to do that training and really take that personal responsibility. But it can't stop there. All 3 pillars require consistent practice. The interesting thing about the tech skills is that your team will more often than not be having the opportunity to be practicing those things and refining those skills day in and day out. And they get instant feedback. If their code or their report is wrong, they'll probably get an error message, so they fix it and move on. And that feedback loop is always on, and it's what we need to truly learn and improve. With the other 2 pillars, the stakeholder connection and business outcomes, we're not consistently practicing these. And this is a major reason why you might find your data strategy is not as effective as it could be. Not only are we wired for safety as humans, we rarely get an obvious feedback loop like you do with code. Not many people are going to want to risk upsetting key stakeholders and making a mistake. So it's very easy for people in technical roles or many other roles to kind of hide behind other pieces of work. So for technical people, hiding behind the technical work, because quite frankly, it's a little bit safer. If you want to create a development plan for your data team, you can book in a free 30-minute consultation with me where we'll identify these 3 things: where your team currently is, your biggest challenges when it comes to training and development, and what options you have available to you to see more impact from your data team. And finally, what training and development options are most likely to help your data team improve in the 3 pillars. Now, if you're already clear about the training you want to provide your team, I offer packages to support the stakeholder connection and business outcomes pillars. So please contact me and we can discuss what would be best for your team's needs. Finally, thanks for watching this video. I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn or you can email me directly.